Hey, Nato here. Today I'm going to start a new series. It is going to be called What If Class 1A Had Different Quirks. This is not what if everyone in the family, everyone in Class 1A and their family had different quirks. It is precisely just them. That for some reason all of them were born with mutation in their DNA that made the quirk that they have different from the rest of their family. That's basically what I wanted to do. So, I had talked with someone for some of them, and one of them was basically passed through his family, evolved to do something, but basically it's just going to be them that for some reason all of them have genetic mutation that makes their power different from what the rest of their family has. So Izuku is born with a quirk. Well, will have a quirk. So when I'm talking about different quirk, I mean like Izuku will have a quirk called Power Source. Basically anything that is energy, momentum, velocity, stuff like that. He can absorb this energy, transfer it to something else. Basically electricity, he could absorb it without being harmed by it. A hit by All Might, he would be able to absorb it. He has to do it constantly, so a surprise attack will harm him. But like, if he gets the air pressure of All Might's hit to the face, and that he sees it coming, he'll basically just be able to absorb the energy, and he'll be able to release it like he wants to. So like, someone tried to shock him, he absorbed the energy, he keeps it inside of him. Someone tries to just punch him normally, he sees it coming, the punch lands, but it doesn't even seem to push Izuku. He's falling from really high, and fire should start burning him. He absorbed the energy that the fire makes that would normally be the thing that burns him, since heat is energy and cold is actually the well, where there is no energy. That's why moving heat source makes heat, because it makes energy moves around. So that's it. So basically, anything that could harm Izuku that isn't something like cold or an attack that comes to him without him knowing. Anything, if he knows it's coming, is going to harm him. Normally, if he doesn't see it coming, if he sees it, he's basically immune because he absorbs it, and he can keep practically an infinite amount of energy in himself without any harm coming to him. Releasing the energy is a different story. If he tries to release too much energy at once, he can break his bones or literally destroy his entire arm. So, yeah. He can put energy through his body to augment his physical abilities like normal strength, speed, regeneration. But it's not going to do like, oh, I I lost my arm, I'm going to try and regrow it. That won't work. Second quirk, Bakugo. His explosion will stay explosions, but this time it's going to be ice explosion. Basically, his sweat is not nitroglycerin, it's liquid nitrogen, which is the coldest matter known to man. So basically, what it does is basically create some kind of steam or mist of that he creates from his hand that practically freeze anything instantly. And the more he's going to train, the colder it's going to get, so it's even going to be worse than normal for liquid nitrogen. But nor, if not, he basically use it practically the same way as his original. It only comes from his hand. Shoto. His dad is Endeavor Fire Lord, basically. Because, well, that's his quirk. Hellfire. His mom has a nice quirk. So in the original, he got a half cold, half hot. In this one, the mutation made him have a light and shadow quirk. Basically, his quirk allows him to manipulate light. He can make it so that he put it around him and he becomes kind of invisible. He can make lasers with it, stuff like that. With his shadow, he can basically turn himself into a shadow, move shadows around, use them to attack basically like if it was a laser, but instead of being pure light, it's basically going to be a shadow that hits you like a brick wall. With his shadow, he can also engulf himself in his shadow to kind of enter them and move around in it, or absorb other people or other things in his shadow to make them disappear, basically in an almost infinite pocket dimension from which he can both put and take out anything he wants as long as it is in it. He can take it out as long as he is in a certain vicinity of it. He can basically make a shadow to engulf it. But it's not like a shadow dragon and a light dragon's lair. He cannot eat them. He is affected by them if he gets hurt. And his body is still touchable. It's just that if he has time, he can make shadows and around his body and anything pass through him. After that, Uraraka. Her quirk is called Gravity Shift. She has the same kind of pad as she has in the original on her fingers. The difference is that she only needs to touch it with one finger if she wants to, and she can decide if she augments the gravitational pull of it or reduce it. So basically, she can, if she wants, make an object weightless, just like in the original, or make an object so which have so much weight that it would basically collapse on itself because of the gravity. Tokoyami is going to have a quirk called Light Beast. As long as there is light around him, he can basically, and that he's able to have at least a part of his body in it, he can create light beasts that are not connected to him, that are independent from him, can think by themselves. Can think by themselves if he Well, to be able to do the task that he tells them to do. Like, they will not be able to think of anything else. Like, if he tells them, open a door, they'll be able to think, okay, or I pass through it by breaking it, or I find a way to open it without breaking it, and I do that. Basically, they're only able to think like in that kind of way. And compared to Dark Shadow, like I said, they are not connected to his body, and they simply take stamina from his body, so he can make a lot of them, but the more he has, the more stamina he uses, so he doesn't use a lot of them at once. Okay, next is Momo. Her quirk is called Matter Transformation. If she is able to touch something, as long as it's not alive, she can basically take about the she can transform the matter into something else. So think of okay, think of it like that. In Full Metal Alchemist, they make circles, then clap their hand, and they can transform something into something different. It's basically the same thing. She needs the same amount of mass to create something else, but compared to Full Metal Alchemist, she could basically grab wood and make stone from it. The problem is that since wood and stone have different mass, the size that it's going to have will be different. So she needs to make something the same exact amount of mass that it would need to be normally, but she can pretty much touch anything and make it. As long as that thing isn't alive or that what she wants to do isn't alive, she can basically make anything she wants as long as she has enough matter around her. Mineta has a quirk called Body Double. Basically, he can make clones of his body. Like, how could I explain his? Well, basically, he makes clones that's easily explainable. They are perfectly identical to him in every way. So, strength, speed, intelligence, except that the clones know that they are clones and cannot revolt against Mineta, no matter what you would try to tell them. And the way he makes clone is basically his body multiply the cell in his body and just kind of pops out as like cell multiplies. That's basically how he does it. But he basically or has basically if the clone gets gets killed, the clone will disappear and turn into dust or something in the same way. That will not have Mineta's DNA. So that's like that. Um, if he's the one who gets hurt hard enough, his mind will pass from his original body and go into a clone if there is one that is still alive. So as long as he has at least one clone out, and even if his normal body gets destroyed, he will just get into his clone, and the clone body will become the real body. Tsuyu. Her quirk is called Chimera. As long as, well, the way it works is that she looks fully human, but she can modify her body to have animal parts. The way it works is basically as long as she saw the part before, she can place it anywhere on her body, and she can make combination of different parts. That's pretty much easy to explain. Ojiro, the tail guy in the anime, his quirk is called Beast, and just like Tsuyu, his quirk is a transformation quirk because he can look fully human, or he can look like a lion, or he can look like a shark. Well, basically, be a lion, be a shark. But his quirk also allows him to mix the two or all three of them together to make like different form. So man shark, lion man, shark lion, and stuff like that, or all together. And it's not like, okay, I want to be those two at the same time, and it makes a mix that he doesn't choose how it looks like. He's the one that chooses how he looks precisely, using the parts of human, lion, and shark. Then we pass to Jiro, who in the anime has the cord earphone jack. Her quirk is going to be called Soundwave. Basically, her body, and I don't mean like present mic, I mean her entire body, can replicate any sound she heard before. She can place the sound really high, really low, or change the frequency. So basically, she can, if she would want, she could literally break glass just after hearing someone cough or something like that by placing the sound so high that, well, on a high note so high that basically anything that is made of glass or stuff like that breaks. Kaminari. His quirk is called weather control. Basically, he can produce from his body clouds, wind, electricity, um, water, rain, stuff like that, as long as it is possible in Earth's atmosphere. His body can release it, and then he can control or the environment around him from that, or what he has produced. So basically, if he wanted to, he could make tornadoes, thunders, lightning. He could make a freaking hell show if he wanted to. So basically, it's kind of one of the easiest to explain because, well, weather control, he creates and control weather. So, or he moves completely the cloud of the way, or he makes enough to completely cover the sun. Kirishima will have mass manipulation. Basically, he can control the mass of his body. He stays in the exact same form, well, shape of a human body for the most part. He can augment his mass or reduce it. By augmenting it, he can make his body has a lot more weight to it and also harden it to a point of basically having a hardening quirk and a and on the other side of the spectrum, when he um, places body mass extremely low, he can become practically a sort of mist. Well, he basically becomes a gas that he controls completely, that he can move around as he please. So yeah, that's basically his quirk, mass control. Aoyama, um, naval laser guy. His quirk will be called Power Blast. Basically, his body creates and accumulates a specific type of energy that creates a massive amount of heat. He can basically release it from his entire body, just like Deku can with the energy he amass, except that compared to Deku, he creates his own energy, and he basically him compared to Deku, who if he uses too much, he breaks his body because it has a limit to how much he can put out at once. Aoyama could basically take everything he has in his reserve and send it at once, and he would just need to relax for a really good amount of time. Basically, for depending on the amount that he used, he'll have to sleep, relax, or stuff like that for a certain amount of time before being able to use his power again. He can, by training, augment the amount that he has in his body to help him control it, as well as augment the power his body can withstand. Because if he wanted to, he could throw his entire amount of energy into a finger and it wouldn't break, but it's going to hurt a lot. So that's basically that. For Mina, um, or Pinky, that she called herself in the anime, her hero name, she's going to have the same. Her quirk is called Serpent Dragon. This quirk is basically made so that she's a dragon that normally lives in water. She doesn't have wings, but underwater her limbs turn into fins and other things that fish use to swim. I forgot the word, sorry. She has a water breathing capacity that she can choose the temperature of it, or even just throw different types of liquid. So, like, she can throw normal water, boiling water, cold as fuck water. Sorry, but basically, really that. She can make ice, steam, mist, and if she really goes all out, she can make basically just like Bakugo has. She can make liquid nitrogen. But just because if I give her the capacity to do it as much as you want, it might be. It will make it look as if Bakugo isn't needed. When she uses it, it harms herself because of the cold. It wasn't placed as in her power set, but I'm going to place it because if not, well, Bakugo basically is just a really, really downgraded version of her because he is totally immune. This Bakugo is totally immune to his own quirk. Basically, he could blast it on himself and it won't freeze on his body. It will make a layer of ice around him, but his body basically creates a counter heat to it that basically melts it automatically. Because if not, it would be really dangerous for him. So, compared to him, Mina is harmed by that when she used liquid nitrogen. Mina will look basically the same as in the original because her every time she changes scales, She can change the color that she wants, but she basically always takes pink, so she looks exactly the same way. Ida will have a quirk called Electro. He can control the electromagnetic field around him, absorb it, contain it in his body, use it automatically. Um, he can control it in a certain perimeter around him, electricity and radio waves, stuff like that. So basically, a TV he could literally make the TV do practically anything he wants to play on it. He could, if there was a electricity source around close to him, absorb the electricity from it and use it to by himself. Or he can basically use the static in the air if he wanted to throw a ball of electricities at people. Since when he do that, it's just static electricity. It does take a large amount of time to charge. That's why I give him a he can keep energy in him, but he does not create it. He needs to charge to have that. Next is Coda. His quirk is called Chameleon. He has the power to change his skin color to match anything he wants. This was the guy that with well the guy with who I spoke about that wanted me to make it so that his family basically had that quirk, but he had a mutation of it. But no, his family has their normal quirk. It's basically, I'm sorry if I didn't tell him that. I think I forgot. Well, if I didn't tell you this, you know now. You know who you are. Um, but yeah, so basically his quirk allows him to change or his skin color, or his voice, or his hair color, all three independently, as many times as he wants to anything that he wants. For the voice, he needs to have heard it before, but that's basically it. Or to make it in his head and that he knows how he wants it to sound exactly. So if he wants to, he can combine different voices to make a new one, but yeah. So after him, it's Sato. Um, Sato, if I remember correctly, was Sugar Rush. Yeah. His quirk in this one is called Momentum Control. For him or other things he touches, he can augment momentum or take away momentum as much as he wants. Like, if he wanted to, he could decide to make himself go extremely fast or make the other people he touches extremely slow. With this quirk comes the problem that if he wants to add momentum to something, he has to take it from somewhere else. Wait, no. His quirk was that he can add and take away momentum as much as he wants without problem. The drawback is that if he does it for too long, his head starts to hurt and he gets sick. Yeah, that was it. Next, uh, Sh- Shoji. Sorry about that. Shoji in the anime is the guy with multi-arm. In this one, his quirk is called Spider. He was born with 6 limbs, some some hairs on his body, um, On each arm, well, on each arm, just over his hand, he has like the Wolverine claws, but just one, and it's a spike. It's basically on each of his hand, and they're darts that can give venom to an opponent. It is an extremely strong venom that paralyzes you on the directly on the nervous system. So you stop moving, your muscles are paralyzed. Not enough to kill you unless you have already problems with that, but basically it can stop you pretty easily. Um, he has spiders can lift up to I think 10 or 100 times their weight. He can go over that, but the more he goes over it, the more strain it does on his body. But basically, the max that he could lift is basically like 500 to 600 times his weight if needs really be. But normally he cannot use it like that because he needs all six of his limbs to do that. Well, all six of his arms. With one arm, he basically can lift 100 times his weight. Well, actually, about 80 time, because every time he adds an arm, it adds the another 80%, but it also gives him more balance and strength to it. So when all six limbs are used at once, it gets to about 600. He can make webs and stuff and stick to walls. As compared to Spider-Man, he doesn't have a spider sense, but he does have 8 eyes that he can close if he wants to, but still. Two in the front, two that are in the front but looking up. No. Well, it's basically like a spider where there's two that can see on the sides, one that's about just on top of the head that can look all the way to behind him, two next to those that are always looking up on the side as well as the other one a little bit lower. So basically his eyes are placed like a spider normally. Um After that we have Zero, who in the anime was the tape guy. In this one his quirk is called gas chamber. He basically looks the exact same, except that I'm going to make his hair purple, and that the way the his elbow looks, basically it looks the same, but it's instead of just being a line where the tape comes out, it's basically a small, well, a hole that is basically round from where he sends gas. If he knows the composition of a gas, he can make it and replicate it. He's basically a lot more intelligent in this one because he can analyze, well, if he knows what type of gas there is or that someone was attacked with, like if it's a poison he never heard of before but that he learns the composition, he can try and mix things up and find a cure for it by making another gas. If he knows the exact composition, he can make pheromones as well. And then we get Toru, the invisible girl. In this one, her quirk is going to be called Plant Body. Her entire body is made of plants that she controls as much as she wants to. They are full of water, which makes them extremely resistant to fire. Well, basically, they're just not capable of being burnt. And at the same time, they produce some kind of heat for some reason, which is basically the way she's kept alive. Is basically like her own energy that creates the that heat, and that heat is can be augmented by her as much as she wants to. So she's also unfreezable. Well, she can be frozen, but she will get herself out, as well as controlling her body to basically any shape she wants. She could make herself go smaller, make herself go underground, make herself basically look like a normal plant. She can also control the plants around her. Compared to her, she can add the plants to her body to make herself grow bigger. When she wants to go back to normal, she has to take those plants out of her. Compared to her own body, or when plants are in her body, plants that are around her, she cannot make like an apple tree do lemons or stuff like that. But she can make them grow a lot bigger than they should be, make them move in different ways to attack her enemies. So that was all 20 of the class 20 students. It took me 36 minutes to tell you about all of them. So, like I said, all of them, it's not that their family have different quirks, it is exactly them. They have mutations in their DNA that all of them has them. Like there are 20 people who have them, and it makes their quirk a lot different from their normal quirk that their family have, but kind of makes it better in some way. So, now that I told you all of that, I'm going to start with Izuku. I'm not going to say the story of everyone else because, except Kirishima, we didn't really see the backstory of anyone else, if I remember correctly. In the last episode of My Hero Academia, we did see a bit that Shiro's parents are musicians, so she does help them a lot with that. Basically, her mutation is like the less weird, mostly, because her mom has earphone jack, and I don't know what her dad has, but her body basically makes sounds. So, okay. So, Izuku started normally. Everything was the same. Bakugo and him were friends. When their quirk showed up, Bakugo got his first, and the quirk he had, basically the first time he used it, it was basically an extremely inferior version of liquid nitrogen. He basically froze the desk he was on, which everyone was like, "Whoa, you have an ice quirk! That's awesome!" So they went to the quirk doctor. They saw that his quirk was really different from them, since his mother has nitroglycerin coming out of her whole body as sweat, and him, on his hand, he basically has liquid nitrogen coming out that isn't cold as long as he doesn't kind of, I won't say ignite it like in the anime his quirk works, but in this one it's more like breaking some kind of chemical barrier that makes it not cold for some reason. So when that happened, Inko brought Izuku to the quirk doctor, where they said, okay, he has a quirk. Um, then let's say they brought in someone that can kind of see how it can work, and she says, oh, he can absorb energy and send it back, which Inko was kind of just like how Bakugo's mom thought. Wait, but our quirks are different than that. Like, she told about Izuku's dad to the quirk doctor that he has a fire breathing quirk. And then the doctor says, yeah, well, it's weird, but I've heard of something happening a bit ago. There's about 20, if I count him and the kid we saw a little bit earlier, I think his name was Bakugo. There's 20 kids who each of them have weird mutation in their body, and their quirks are different from their parents. And basically completely different from their entire family, with some resemblance sometimes. So basically that. So yeah, he's talking about everyone that will be in class 1A. When Shuttle got his quirk, his dad was basically trying to go to hold back going apeshit because his son didn't have his quirk. But for some reason, at that age, he was weirdly able to control the shadows pretty easily. So, yeah, basically for that, um, Kirishima's parents were basically, uh, well, the first time he used his quirk, he used it to augment his mass. His parents didn't have the same type of quirk as him completely, so they thought it was a hardening quirk like the hero he loved. But going basically the guy that told Izuku that his quirk was something that could absorb energy and send it back basically saw each of those kids and were like, it doesn't make sense. All of them have something, so basically they had checked DNA and were like, yeah, they have mutation in them. So, um, Endeavor did train Shoto a lot more because, well, he is basically he can actually be a lot more powerful than Endeavor because of the combination of quirk he has. In this one, um, Shoto does still get the injury, but this time it was an accident. His mother wasn't afraid of him as much because the reason she burned him in the anime was because he had the quirk of Endeavor, which scared her. She did leave, but for the injury, that was an accident. Shoto's hair are one half completely black, the other half completely white, but he can use light and dark and shadows on his entire body without problem. It's not half and half like cut in the middle for him. Basically, he's the only one with a parent that's a pro hero. Oh, Ida's family is are pro heroes. His family basically didn't deny, thought he was weird because, well, or that he wasn't good to be in the family. They just thought his quirk would be different, or an upgraded version of it, like his body modifies itself to do something or stuff like that. When he got his quirk, they told him that, well, basically what his quirk was made like. He can control electromagnetic field and different types of radio waves and stuff like that. And his family basically thought, okay, yeah, he will, he won't have engines, but that quirk's powerful. It can do a lot. He could even intercept different um, criminal um, criminal transaction that are made like on the phone or stuff like that, thanks to the radio wave control. I don't think any others have pro heroes for family members. So yeah, with Izuku and Bakugo, they trained their quirk practically together most of the time. Bakugo had a cooler temper because his quirk wasn't as flashy. It was extremely strong, but it's not basically making explosion. And he had someone with some a quirk that basically overpowered his pretty easily. Like Izuku could basically just go on some place where there's a lot of wind and basically absorb all that energy and then just in one motion release a good amount of it. He found out pretty quick that if he released too much energy, his body breaks, so he basically trained his body to be able to augment the amount of energy he can release. He found out that if he actually knows what's coming, practically nothing can harm him unless it's something that basically stops energy, like ice and cold like that. So Bakugo. But that since he can store any types of energy, he basically tried something at one point, which was basically someone had started a fire and Izuku basically placed his hand on the bottom without burning himself, basically absorbing all of the energy that was released from it as well as the heat. And then basically put off the fire. And then at some point when Bakugo came back to try and fight him, Izuku basically placed his hand on fire, releasing, well, not on fire, but releasing a massive amount of heat, which basically countered his Bakugo's liquid nitrogen, which made a a cloud of of steam that basically everyone was like, "Whoa!" So they grew up being friends. Everyone else grew up basically being, well, being called the strongest in their class practically, since Mina can basically freeze anything she wants and swim extremely fast. Um, Kirishima can just, if he wants to, augment his mass by 200 if he wanted to, staying the same size and punch through practically anything. Also making his weight so much that he basically breaks through the floor any place he is. Or if he wants to let a hit pass through him, he basically becomes gas. It takes time for him to change from one to another. Like, if he wanted to augment his mass by 20, it would take like about 10 seconds. If he wanted to reduce it by 20. It takes more time because it's harder for his body to do that. He will train to make it easier, but he mostly will train to make it faster to lose mass. So basically, both of everyone grew up being kind of praised for this for the difference in their quirk and the strength that they had, because practically all of their quirks are unique at this point. Like, not all of them, since there's like four of them that's nah, kind of. But yeah, so yeah, that was basically what their quirks were, what they are already able to do. Um, so this was part 0. In the next part, I'm going to start from the start of the anime with Izuku age 13 and start from there. Hope you liked it. Natsu out.